We can join Sally Lockwood, who is in Jerusalem. And Sally, let's just talk about this in two parts. First of all, this decision to recognise the state of Palestine in September unless Israel meets these certain conditions. I just wonder how that will go down in Israel, first of all.
Yeah, hello, Mark. Well, it's likely to elicit a very strong and negative reaction from the Israelis and from Benjamin Netanyahu. Of course, we've already seen how the Israeli Prime Minister and his government have reacted to similar moves by other European countries, namely France, and they are not happy about it. Frankly, they are furious. It's very interesting that Keir Starmer has made this move, an announcement, following Donald Trump's visit and his meetings with him in Scotland, and certainly we'll wait to hear the reaction from the Israelis. But in the past, when other countries have made these moves, like France, they've said that it rewards terrorism and that it threatens to create another Iranian proxy, a state that would want to annihilate Israel. It's fair to say that this will have a very negative reaction here from the Israeli government. And it comes just after the Knesset voted in favour just last week of annexing the West Bank. Again, another symbolic move, but something that would thwart the popular plan for a path to peace in this region for many of Israel's allies, which is a two-state solution. Annexing the West Bank simply would make that unviable. So it seems that Israel and its traditional allies, like France and the UK, are moving in opposite directions in terms of their plans for how to create peace between the Palestinians and Israel.
Yeah, and I mean, this point to make about these conditions that Keir Starmer has put down. He talks about getting aid into Gaza. That's one thing. Reaching a ceasefire, that's another thing. But then this idea of committing to a long-term peace process that delivers a two-state solution. And Benjamin Netanyahu has said on many occasions he is vehemently set against that.
Yes, that's right, Mark. It's very hard at the moment to see how these two sides will reach any sort of agreement when it comes to the future of Palestinians in this region. And when it comes to aid, it was interesting that Keir Starmer said British aid has now been airdropped into Gaza today and that aid needs to flood Gaza, I think were his words. Well, this comes, of course, after another report today from the UN, from the leading international organisation when it comes to food crises, that they are seeing essentially famine, the worst case scenario for famine playing out in Gaza, despite it not being formally declared yet, because they don't have the official data and research that is required to declare a famine officially. And that's mainly due to the lack of access to Gaza. And they're warning that we could now potentially see mass deaths if there isn't immediate action. Now, of course, we have seen these airdrops in the last 3 days. We've had that announcement from Israel that there are to be humanitarian pauses in 3 areas of Gaza to allow aid to get in by road. But what is actually happening? It's very hard to get detail of how that is playing out on the ground. I spoke to a staff member at UNICEF to find out what aid they're managing to get in, and he said still very little, that actually they've managed to get lorries into Karim Shalom, the border area between Gaza and Israel, but it's a 3-step process. Firstly, the lorries have to be allowed in there, and then agencies like UNICEF need to be given permission to go and collect the aid, and then they need to distribute it to their partners. It is a very lengthy process. It requires a lot of coordination and clearances. And right now, that aid is simply not moving fast enough. And the other challenge they have, gangs and crowds of people, desperate people, looting that aid on the roads. And there are supposed to be secure routes now as well for that aid to reach people. I asked how bad things were. Are they managing to get food to children who've got malnutrition, to pregnant women who've got malnutrition? Of course, we've heard the statistics of just how many children now are suffering in Gaza. And he said he simply doesn't know, but that aid is definitely not flowing fast enough. They've got some preventative food out from Karim Shalom today. Now, that's essentially high-energy biscuits. It's vaccines. it's nappies and it's baby formula. That they've managed to get on the road, but not enough of it. And in terms of therapeutic foods, he said that's still at Karim Shalom in that border area. Now, therapeutics food, I've learnt today, is essentially almost like a peanut butter type paste, which is high in energy and high in micronutrients and won't prevent a child from suffering with malnutrition, but it will get them out of the danger zone. Now, UNICEF hasn't had any confirmation that that has actually hit the roads in Gaza. Now, I found all this detail really interesting because it's so hard to understand exactly what picture is going on in terms of aid distribution. But we've had these headlines that there have been humanitarian pauses, that safe routes will be created, that there are going to be airdrops. But the reality is 1 in 3 people in Gaza, we've learned from the UN, haven't eaten for several days, that 25% of children and pregnant women are now suffering from malnutrition. And according to UNICEF, this staff member that's spoken to me this afternoon, they still haven't been able to get aid to those people, and time is running out. This is no longer about sounding the alarm. People don't have until tomorrow to wait for food. That aid that is waiting at the border in Gaza simply needs to be accelerated into the places that need it, and fast. There is no time to waste, and filming shots of lorries going into that border area doesn't mean it's good news. It's still not getting to the people who so desperately need it.
And Sally, of course, you were on one of these aid drops of aid into Gaza by the Jordanians and the UAE, but these are very small amounts, aren't they? And it can be dangerous, clearly. But those aid drops, I gather, have been continuing today. I think we've got pictures of those aid drops continuing today, and we understand that that's going to go on for the foreseeable future. But I suppose my question to you is there any sign at all that Israel accepts that there is a humanitarian crisis, that there is starvation in Gaza? Because I heard the foreign minister today talking about lies, and an Israeli government spokesman came on this programme last week and said the only famine was a famine of the truth. So is there any sign at all that the Israeli government is accepting there is a humanitarian crisis that needs sorting out now in Gaza?
Well, I think it's very interesting that they announced these new humanitarian measures just a few days ago. Certainly, they are feeling international pressure. Whether they believe it or not is another thing. It's certainly not something that they've made public. They like to make the same lines time and time again, that Hamas is to blame. There are stockpiles of food and aid in Gaza. It's the UN's fault for not distributing it. But it's very interesting, Mark, to hear how Israelis actually feel. We were crossing the border from Jordan back into Israel today after that airdrop flight, and an Israeli border employee made it clear to us that they weren't happy at all about the situation in Gaza. They don't feel represented by their government. So I think what you will hear from Benjamin Netanyahu and the likes of Israel Katz is very different from what you may hear from Israeli civilians. And just on those aid drops, again, one of the announcements made by the Israeli government in order to alleviate the humanitarian catastrophe in Gaza, well, I mean, they're hugely symbolic and they really make very little difference. And if anything, we've heard from Palestinians on the ground in Gaza that it's just making the situation even more dangerous, that crowds of people are rushing towards those aid drops when they land, and they can only carry very little, a fraction of what you can fit in a convoy of lorries. And people are rushing towards them. It's now very much being controlled by gangs who are fighting people. They've got knives, they've got guns to try and get to the food, and it's hitting the black market. It's just not getting to the weakest people, those people who really need it. And I just had a message from someone in Khan Yunis who said to me, you know, I've been out for 2 days looking for food. He's got 3 very young children, including a baby who's got malnutrition. And he said to me, I spent 2 days trying to get food, and I've come back with 2 kilos of chickpeas. Now, I've no idea whether they were tinned chickpeas or raw chickpeas, but another criticism that this UN report made today about the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, that controversial body that began distributing the aid in Gaza in May, backed by Israel and the US. The report has essentially said that their plans for aid distribution in Gaza would lead to mass starvation because what they're distributing simply isn't fit for purpose. You need water and you need fuel to cook a lot of what they're giving out, and people in Gaza simply don't have that.
OK, Sally, thank you very much indeed.